ghost in the ledger. A red laser dot moved across Marcus's chest, then jumped to Leo's forehead. The room went silent, except for the sound of wind whistling through the shattered window. 2 seconds later, everything would change forever. 13 hours earlier. Leo leaned forward in his black leather swivel chair, the harsh blue light of the 27-inch Dell monitor casting shadows across his face. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the edge of the desk. Tap, tap, tap. A nervous habit he couldn't break. Rain drummed against the window pane behind him. The faint hum of the computer fan filled the home office, mixing with the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Through his glasses, he could see the reflection of spreadsheet cells dancing across the lenses. His right hand moved the Logitech mouse, scrolling through a digital PDF. The title read, Apex Tech Solutions, Q3 Expenditures. He'd been staring at these numbers for 2 hours now, ever since Marcus left the office around 9. The coffee on his desk had gone cold an hour ago. Leo paused the scroll on an entry. There it was. Transfer to Shellco Holdings, $45,000. The date was yesterday. In the authorized signature field, a digital scan of Marcus Thorne's signature sat beside the amount. Clean, distinctive script that Leo had seen 10,000 times. He squinted at the screen. His jaw tightened. His breathing slowed. His left hand, trembling slightly, reached for the framed 4:6 photo on the corner of the desk. It showed him and Marcus at their graduation, arms slung around each other's shoulders, holding beer cups, both grinning like idiots. The glass was dusty. Leo picked it up carefully, as if it might shatter in his grip. The contrast between the smiling faces and the cold data on the screen made his stomach twist. He set the photo down face first and opened a folder on the desktop titled Personal Backups. His lips pressed into a thin line as he typed aggressively. A 12-digit password. Asterisks appeared in the password field. Enter. The folder opened. Inside were files, thousands of them, screenshots, financial documents, bank statements, all showing the same pattern: transfers going out, money disappearing, and always, Marcus's name attached. Leo sat back in his chair and stared at the monitor until his eyes burned. By 1:30 a.m., Leo was on the South Pier, crouched behind a rusted blue shipping container. The fog rolled thick across the warehouse district. He could barely see 20 feet ahead. His breath came out visible in the cold air, ghostly and pale. He crouched low, peering around the corrugated metal edge. His heart pounded against his ribs. 50 feet away, Marcus stood next to a black Mercedes S-Class. A man in a tan trench coat stood across from him. Broad shoulders, scarred chin, the kind of face that had seen violence up close. The enforcer. Leo's mind supplied, though he had no way of knowing that. Marcus was handing something to the man. A thick manila envelope. Even from this distance, Leo could see Marcus checking his watch, looking over his shoulder, his body language screaming fear. The enforcer lit a cigarette. The orange glow from the lighter caught the scar on his chin for just a moment, enough to make Leo's blood run cold. Leo took a step back. His heel found a discarded green glass bottle. The crunch echoed across the warehouse like a gunshot. The enforcer spun around. In one fluid motion, he reached into his jacket and drew a black telescopic baton. He extended it with a sharp shink sound that made Leo's breath catch. Then he started running, sprinting straight toward Leo's position. There was no time to think, only time to act. Leo ducked as the baton swung. The metal bar whistled past his head, so close he felt the air displacement. Leo lunged forward, driving his shoulder into the man's midsection. The enforcer grunted on impact, the air exploding from his lungs. They grappled for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Leo delivered a sharp elbow to the man's nose. Blood sprayed, hot and bright, onto Leo's gray hoodie. The enforcer staggered back, dropping the baton. It clattered against the concrete. Leo turned and ran. The fog swallowed him up. His apartment was empty when he arrived, his clothes still damp with sea spray and blood. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his key sliding into the lock with trembling hands. Then he stopped. The door was already open. Marcus was sitting on the beige sofa, holding a glass of water. He looked perfectly calm, perfectly composed, like he'd been waiting there all evening. "How did you get in here, Marcus?" Leo's voice came out cold, barely controlled. "And why were you at the docks?" Marcus stood slowly, setting the glass on the glass-topped coffee table. He pulled a folded, yellowing document from his pocket. The paper had the kind of creases that came from being kept in a wallet for years. "The company was never ours, Leo," Marcus said. The words came out desperate, cracking at the edges. "My father stole the seed money, and now his debts are calling. I've been paying them off with our profits to keep us alive." Marcus handed the paper over. Leo unfolded it with shaking hands. It was an original patent filing from 10 years ago. The name of the inventor wasn't Leo. It wasn't Marcus either. It was Elias Thorne, Marcus's father. Leo stared at the name, underlined in red ink. His hands started shaking. The paper rustled. He crumpled it in his fist, the sound of tearing paper filling the room like a scream. He stepped closer to Marcus, his face inches away. Veins bulged in his neck. His eyes burned with betrayal. That's when the red laser dot appeared on Marcus's chest. It was impossibly bright in the dim room. Leo saw it first, his eyes tracking it without understanding what he was seeing. Then it moved. The dot slid across to Leo's forehead. It settled there, steady, patient, hunting. For a moment, neither man moved. The sound of Leo's heartbeat filled his ears. Boom, boom, boom. Then came a high-pitched electronic whine from somewhere outside the window, from somewhere in the darkness. Leo dived forward, tackling Marcus off the sofa just as the large plate glass window exploded inward. The crash was enormous, apocalyptic. Glass shards flew like diamonds in the lamplight, catching the light and throwing it back in 1,000 directions. A man in a black tactical mask swung through the broken window on a rappelling rope. His movement was efficient, predatory. He held a suppressed pistol, a Glock 17, and his body language said he'd done this before. He fired twice, fired. Phew, phew. Both shots hit the sofa cushions. Feathers erupted into the air like snow. Leo grabbed a heavy crystal whiskey decanter from the side table. He didn't think. He just threw. The decanter struck the man's helmet with a solid clack that made the assassin stumble. Amber liquid sprayed across the black mask. Marcus crawled toward the kitchen, his hands scrambling. He grabbed a long, serrated bread knife from the magnetic rack on the wall. The blade caught the work lights, reflecting them like a beacon. But Leo was already moving. He engaged the assassin in a brutal grapple, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting the gun away. The pistol pointed at the ceiling. Leo drove his knee upward, aiming for the groin. The man twisted, and Leo's knee caught ribs instead. The impact was solid. Good enough. The gun dropped to the floor. The assassin recovered faster than Leo expected. He drove his elbow back toward Leo's face. Leo barely turned his head in time. The elbow grazed his cheekbone, stinging. Leo spun, using the man's own momentum against him, and threw him toward the jagged remains of the window. The assassin crashed through the remaining glass teeth and tumbled backward, the rappelling rope catching him before he fell fully. He hung there for a moment, suspended over the street below. Then he pushed himself away from the building and descended into the darkness. Leo stood in the wreckage, breathing hard. Marcus was staring at him from the kitchen, the bread knife still in his hand. "We need to go," Leo said. They moved through the night in Leo's car. The streets were empty. Marcus directed him to a place on the outskirts of the city, an old laundromat with yellow neon signage that had burned out years ago. They went around the back, down a set of concrete stairs that descended into darkness. At the bottom was a door. Marcus had a key. The basement room smelled like bleach and old concrete. Industrial washing machines sat dormant upstairs, and every few minutes one would engage, sending a rhythmic thumping down through the ceiling. The walls were bare except for a corkboard covered in maps and photographs. A metal folding chair sat in one corner. A first aid kit lay open on the floor. Leo sat in the chair and watched Marcus bandage a cut on his arm with white gauze. The fluorescent light overhead flickered at irregular intervals. Leo's eyes fixed on a photograph pinned to the corkboard. It was passport-sized, showing Marcus with a woman Leo didn't recognize. She had dark hair pulled back tight. She was smiling. Around her neck hung a gold locket, delicate chain, intricate design, with an L engraved on the front. Leo's breath caught. That locket. He'd bought that locket for his sister Sarah 11 months ago. He'd given it to her the day before she died in the hospital. She'd been wearing it when they took her for the final time. He stood. His hands moved on their own. He reached up and ripped the photo from the board, the pushpin falling to the floor with a metallic ping. He turned to face Marcus, holding the photo up like evidence at a trial. "This is Sarah's locket," Leo said. His voice came out low, dangerous. "You told me it was lost in the hospital. Who is this woman?" Marcus stopped bandaging his arm. He dropped the gauze. It fell to the floor like a white flag. He wiped his face with his clean hand, smearing a bit of blood on his cheek. The mask of the friend fell away. What remained underneath was something cold and calculating. Marcus reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a second phone. The same model Leo had seen references to in the financial records. He checked a notification, tilted the screen, then turned it toward Leo. The message read, "Target status, cornered. Await instructions." "She wasn't just your sister, Leo," Marcus said. His voice had changed. It had become flat, robotic. "She was working for the people I owe. And she didn't lose the locket. She gave it to me as a down payment." Leo stared at him. Nothing he'd believed about the world was true anymore. By 5:30 a.m., they were on a coastal road carved into a cliffside, the ocean crashing against black rocks 200 feet below. The pre-dawn light was gray and thick, barely illuminating the road ahead. Leo was driving his silver sedan. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, hands tucked in his pockets, staring straight ahead. Neither of them spoke. In the rearview mirror, headlights appeared. They grew brighter. A black SUV with bull bars pulled behind them, matching their speed exactly. Leo's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His knuckles turned white. The SUV accelerated. The gap closed. 50 feet, 30, 10. The impact was catastrophic. The SUV slammed into the sedan's rear bumper. Leo's head snapped back against the headrest. The sedan fishtailed toward the guardrail. Sparks flew from the contact point. The tires screamed against the wet asphalt. Leo fought the wheel, trying to control the slide. The guardrail was rushing up, inches away now, nothing but jagged metal between them and the drop. He made a decision. He slammed on the brakes and yanked the handbrake. The sedan spun 180 degrees. For a moment, everything seemed to float in suspension. The world inverted. The sky became the ground, and the ground became the sky. Then they stopped, inches from the cliff edge. Leo's hand flew to the glove box. He pulled out a flare gun, old, dusty, meant for emergencies. His fingers found the trigger almost by instinct. He fired through the open driver's window. The red magnesium orb sailed through the air in an arc. It hit the SUV's windshield and erupted. The entire vehicle was consumed by a blinding white-red light. The interior became a furnace of fire and smoke. The SUV swerved hard left, directly toward the rock wall. It crashed with a sound like the world ending. Metal twisted. Glass shattered. The vehicle was suddenly not a vehicle anymore, but a twisted sculpture of destruction. Embedded in stone, smoke rising in thick coils. Leo kicked his door open. He reached over and grabbed Marcus by the collar, dragging him out of the sedan. They stumbled away from the cars as the SUV's fuel tank began to leak, fire crawling across the asphalt toward them. They ran. The cliff edge appeared suddenly in the pre-dawn gloom. Leo stopped at the rusted guardrail, his hands gripping the metal so hard they ached. 200 feet below, the gray Atlantic waves crashed against jagged black rocks. The water looked black in the dim light, like it had depth that didn't end. He grabbed Marcus and slammed him against the guardrail, his forearm pressed against Marcus's throat. Marcus gasped, his eyes wide, but beneath the fear there was something else. A smile. "Push me, Leo." Marcus wheezed. He reached into his inner jacket pocket with a trembling hand and pulled out a small remote. It was thumb-sized, plastic, with a single red button. "Go ahead. The moment my pulse stops, every server at Apex Tech wipes. And an email goes to the DA detailing every single one of your shell companies. Every transaction, every signature." Leo stared at the remote. He remembered the personal backups folder he'd opened in his office hours ago. He remembered his own signature on documents Marcus had given him over coffee. They'd been working together for 15 years. And in that moment, Leo understood. Marcus had spent every single day of those 15 years framing him. Marcus pushed back, regaining his footing. He straightened his twisted tie with a trembling hand, reclaiming his authority. "I didn't betray you, Leo," he said. His voice had steadied. "I managed you. Now, get in the car. We have a buyer to meet who doesn't like to wait." They drove in silence. The sky lightened as the sun began its rise. They took the highway inland, away from the coast, away from the destruction they'd left behind. Leo didn't know where they were going. Marcus wouldn't tell him. By 7:30 a.m., they were climbing the concrete stairwell of an unfinished luxury tower, called the Sovereign. The construction was still incomplete. Walls not yet installed, electrical conduits hanging exposed. The wind whistling through empty frames where windows would eventually go. The penthouse level was different. Someone had installed glass walls already, expensive glass that gave views of the entire city below. The sun was breaking over the horizon, painting everything gold and red. A woman sat at a glass desk. She wore a sharp white suit, her hair pulled back tight. Her face was handsome in an angular way, her eyes cold and empty. She was holding Sarah's gold locket, twisting the chain around her finger. "Elena, the woman from the photograph." "Gentlemen," she said. Her voice was smooth, cultured. "I've been expecting you." She slid a steel briefcase across the glass desk. It clicked open to reveal stacks of $100 bills and a small external hard drive. The holographic strips on the bills shimmered in the morning light. 20 million, Elena said. and the encrypted files containing all the back doors into government infrastructure your company has been maintaining. Everything gets transferred. You disappear. Elias's debts are paid. Everyone lives. Marcus nodded. He reached for the briefcase. Leo's eyes fell on a heavy metal level lying on the floor. Construction equipment left behind. In one motion, he kicked it up into his hand and swung it at Marcus. The level connected with Marcus's ribs. The impact was solid, satisfying. Marcus flew backward, crashing into the glass desk. The glass shattered. Money flew everywhere, bills dancing in the wind like autumn leaves. Elena pulled a small derringer from her sleeve. She fired. The bullet tore through the air and grazed Leo's shoulder, ripping the fabric of his hoodie. His blood bloomed red on the white wall behind him. Leo tackled Marcus again. They rolled across the floor through the shattered glass, punching and gouging at each other's eyes. Leo's vision filled with red. Marcus's blood, his own blood. The morning light turning everything the color of violence. They crashed into a concrete pillar. Marcus got Leo against the wall, his hands around Leo's throat. But Leo drove his forehead forward, connecting with Marcus's nose. Blood sprayed again, warm and copper-tasting. Elena was shouting, trying to reach her gun. But in the chaos, with both men locked in their brutal dance, she was powerless. Leo's fingers found Marcus's eyes. He pressed hard. Marcus screamed. His grip on Leo's throat loosened. Leo drove his fist upward into Marcus's chin. Elena picked up the hard drive from the floor. She was done. She turned toward the elevator. Leo's fingers closed around the locket. His eyes went from pain to something else. A cold, dead stare. He reached out with his left hand toward a loose electrical conduit dangling from the ceiling. His right hand still held the locket. The wires were live, humming with high-voltage electricity. They sparked occasionally, bright blue arcs. Leo jammed the metal locket into the junction box behind him. The short circuit was instantaneous. A loud buzz crack echoed through the floor. Somewhere below, a transformer exploded. The room plunged into complete darkness as the floor's temporary lighting died. The emergency strobes kicked on. Red light flashed in rhythmic intervals, turning the world into a strobe light nightmare. Shapes appeared and disappeared. The floor alarm began to wail, a high-pitched, penetrating sound that made everything feel urgent and apocalyptic. Elena stumbled, disoriented by the sudden darkness. She dropped the derringer. It clattered against the floor. In the strobing red light, Leo became a ghost. He swept the steel briefcase off the floor and moved toward the concrete pillar, keeping to the shadows. The stairs. He needed the stairs. He found them by feel, one hand trailing along the concrete wall. His shoulder burned where the bullet had grazed him. His body was a catalog of pain, bruises, cuts, the ache of exertion. But he kept moving. Marcus caught him on the 40th floor landing. Marcus was wielding a jagged piece of glass from the penthouse, his face feral with desperation. His shirt was torn, blood soaking through the fabric. His eyes were wild. "You think you won?" Marcus's voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "No," Leo said. "I just think I'm done." Marcus attacked. He swung the glass shard at Leo's face. Leo didn't duck. Instead, he used the briefcase as a shield, letting Marcus strike the metal. The glass shattered on impact, pieces flying everywhere. Then Leo swung the briefcase into Marcus's knees. The metal connection was brutal. Marcus's legs buckled. He crashed onto the stairs, tumbling down 3 steps before stopping. Leo descended after him. He pinned Marcus down with his knee, pressing the man's shoulders against the concrete. Marcus fought, but he was already broken, already defeated. Leo pulled out the remote. Marcus's dead man's trigger, the device he'd shown Leo hours ago to maintain control. He forced Marcus's own thumb onto the red button and pressed. The button clicked. Somewhere in the tower, somewhere in the network, the dead man's switch activated. But Leo had had time to think, time to plan. He'd broken into Marcus's phone in those dark moments in the penthouse and changed the sync destination. The email that was about to send to the DA wouldn't contain evidence of Leo's crimes. It would contain the footage from the tower's security cameras. It would show Marcus standing in the hospital room with Sarah. It would show him searching her bag. It would show him letting the oxygen run out. Leo leaned in close. He pulled the hard drive out of his pocket, the one he'd stolen from Elena in the chaos of the strobing red light, and dropped it into Marcus's jacket pocket. "I changed the destination of the sync, Marcus," Leo whispered. "The DA isn't getting an email about me. They're getting the footage of you in this tower. Everything. Goodbye, brother." Leo stood. He left Marcus there, bleeding on the concrete stairs. He left the empty briefcase filled with construction rubble he'd swapped in the dark. He left his best friend to face the consequences alone. Leo walked down the stairs. His footsteps echoed. The emergency alarm was fading as he descended deeper, the sound being absorbed by concrete and distance. His breathing gradually slowed. His heartbeat normalized. By the time he reached street level, the first police cars were pulling up outside the tower. He exited through a service entrance on the opposite side of the building and walked into the morning city. 10 hours later, Leo sat in a vinyl booth at a diner in a different city. The sun was bright through the windows. The place smelled like coffee and bacon and the accumulated grease of 10,000 meals. A waitress placed a plain white mug of coffee in front of him. The steam rose in delicate wisps. Leo was wearing a new, clean black jacket. His face had been washed. His wounds had been examined at a private clinic that asked no questions. The bruises would fade. The scars would remain. But scars were honest. He opened the local newspaper. The headline read, "Tech Mogul Arrested in Tower Raid. Accomplice Elena Vance at Large." A grainy photo showed Marcus being led away in handcuffs by federal agents. He looked broken. He looked like a man who'd lost everything. Leo turned the page. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the gold locket. He clicked it open with his thumbnail. Inside was the photo of his sister, Sarah. She was smiling. She'd been smiling that last day in the hospital when she gave him the locket and whispered, "Keep this safe. There are things you don't know yet. Things you need to know." Leo flipped the photograph over. Tucked behind Sarah's picture was something he'd never noticed before. Something the locket had been protecting all along. A tiny, folded micro SD card. The actual evidence. Not the fake files Marcus had been searching for, but the real ones. The proof of everything. Sarah had embedded it inside the locket years ago, hidden it in plain sight. She'd known. Somehow, she'd known. Leo held the micro card between his fingers for a moment. Then he set it aside. He looked at the photograph of his sister for a long time. The waitress came by to refill his coffee. Leo waved her off. He set the locket down carefully at the rim of the white mug. He left a $20 bill on the table and stood up. The door chime rang as he pushed it open. The bright morning sun flooded the diner. Leo stepped into it, feeling the warmth on his face. He didn't look back. Behind him in the white mug, the locket sank slowly through the black coffee to the bottom, catching the light one final time before disappearing into darkness.